Harvey, could you please announce the date?
Yeah, it's June 13th, 2022, corresponding to Tetvav Sivan 5782.
That's the highlight of this year. There you have
Not
it.
really, but at least we know we'll be able to
It's like the
figure
guy
out when
that starts
she
the
was
basketball game, the
given.
umpire with his
No,
announcement.
no. We're gonna, years from now, when people listen to it, they'll know when it took place.
Yeah. Okay, no, it's very important.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the Bli Neder, this because I shouldn't promise anything, but this will be the last year on Pruzbal. Pruzbal, maybe I overdid it, I don't know, but I thought we're somewhat divorced from Shemitah and Eretz Yisrael. Shemitah's karka does not apply that much to us. It applies a little bit. I could have given shiurim on the Heter Mechira, which I did 7 years ago, so that's why I didn't repeat it now. But Pruzbal, the Pruzbal is relevant to all of us, and as everything in Torah, everything is multi-dimensional. So I gave 4 shiurim. So I gave 3 shiurim. This would be the 4th. So Izzy Riffin called me up and he says, "You gave so many shiurim. I don't know if I'm coming and going and what, this year, last year, which year." So it's all very simple. Izzy, if you're there, it's simple. The first there was an issue whether Bisman Hazeh, we know it's Shemitah. So that's the Mechaber Paskins, the Shemitah's Ksafim rather. Is there a din of Shemitah's Ksafim nowadays? So the Mechaber Paskins that there is, which is the plain understanding, and the Ramah says that the minig is that there's not. And the minig was based on the Rosh says when he came to Spain, he was astounded to find out the people there didn't practice Shemitah and they didn't write Pruzbals as a result. He didn't understand why, and he wanted to change things. They said, leave it alone, please. Don't mess with it. And also there were a lot of outstanding loans from years ago. He would have messed up the whole Jewish economy. So he left it alone. Although he said he didn't understand why they had that. He said maybe it's because the language of the Pruzbal somehow or another gets around the problem of Shemitah. But the Ramah paskins that way. The Ramah says that first the Ramah says that we're knowing to write Pruzbal, but then he says, but there are those that say that you don't have to write a Pruzbal based on the Rosh and also the Marik and the Chumas Hadeshen and others. So in the end, the Ramah says that there is says that that's the ikar. The main halach is that there's no chiyuv to make a Pruzbal because mikar adin Shemitah is not noig b'zman hazeh. That's the way the Ramah paskins. The Sfardim follow the Mechaber that there is Pruzbal, there is Shemitah. The Ashkenazim, even though the Ramah says that mikar din you don't have to make a Pruzbal, but everybody nowadays makes a Pruzbal. That became the minhag. I don't know how long ago, but the Piskei Tshuva says that's the minhag. But there's room to be lenient. Ramosha, we learned the truth from Ramosha. Somebody forgot to make a Pruzbal, so there's room to be lenient that you could still collect the chol. That was the first year. The second year was about how does Shemitah work exactly? Is it does God remove the loan, or does the person have to remove? Does the person have to say macholach, or is it what's called afchata the malka? That means that God does it, and that didn't have really well the ramification of halach is nowadays if you didn't write a Pruzbal, then you're supposed to tell the person that the loan is absolved. But if you write a Pruzbal, it's not relevant. And then the third share was whether the third share, when you write a Pruzbal before the 7th year or only at the end of the 7th, or in the 6th year or 7th year. So there was the Rosh held that there's two dinim. There's one din that the loan is absolved. That's at the end of the 7th year. But then there's another din that you can't collect the loan during the 7th year, and therefore you need to have two Pruzbals. That's basically the whole story. It's very simple. But now we're going to do bottom line halacha maisa is a practical. So what do you do? How do you write a Pruzbal? That's what this year is going to be about. So there's 2 basic texts for Pruzbal. If you look on the first page, the first text it says it comes from the Bezdin of Rabbi Yashav. It says, "Anachnu hachos mimata mashim zeh." We who sign below attest to the fact Yasel Kadmana that such and such a person came to us, and he said, "V'amar lana," he said to us, "Hein shanazu shnasa shmita v'yesh li chovos v'shtar about pal nashim about banking. I people owe me money, and the banks too. V'hareini mostram lebezdin be'ir, and I'm giving them over to the bezdin in the city. Halohema Rav so and so, Rav so and so, Rav so and so." And they're the ones that should collect the loan for me. And then witnesses sign. This text means he doesn't go to the bezdin. The bezdin is sitting wherever they sit, but he's handing it over to the bezdin remotely. We're used to we're in the remote age where everything's remote. People work remote, so there's a remote Pruzbal that the Rishonim say you don't have to actually. You could be meiser the chovos to the idea of Pruzbal is that Bezdin is collecting the chov, and therefore the Torah says lo yigos, it doesn't apply to a Bezdin. But the question is, how do you get the chovos to the Bezdin? So the first this position says that you could do it remotely, you don't have to be there. The second Pruzbal is where you actually have a Bezdin, but most of Tlasa Kechad Havina, we were sitting together. Rav so and so. They address the people that are sitting there as dayanim, and then they sign as dayanim. This means to say that they create a bezdin. You have, and this is what I did always for years in the shul. I get two people to join me on Sunday morning for all the minyanim, and the three of us are a bezdin. And then somebody comes, we fill out, put his name in, and then the three of us sign as a bezdin, even though they're not trained people and they're not experts in Choshen Mishpat. I actually not an expert either, but we form an ad hoc bezdin, so to speak. So there's the reason why there's two different nuschos is because there's a big machlokas. There is a machlokas whether you have to appear before the bezdin. Could you do it remotely? That's one shaila. And there's another machlokas what kind of bezdin could execute a pruzbal. Does it have to? It could be any Tom, Dick, and Harry, or Chaim, Yosef, and Shlomo, or does it have to be a bezdin kavua, sitting bezdin, or does it have to be the bezdin of the ear, or does it have to be the main bezdin? So those two issues are machlokas rishonim. So that's why one approach to Pruzbal is one way, the other approach is another way. The question is, which one is better? If you're doing one, which one should you pick? Is it better one way or the other way? So that's what we're going to discuss tonight. Which way is better? And I'm not going to tell you the secret answer until we get to the end of this year.
Can I ask what is Aramaic in both of them, partially?
Because the Gemara was written in Aramaic, and the text for Pruzbal is found in the Gemara, and therefore they copied it over in the text of that we use.
It's written in the vernacular so that everybody can understand it.
Yeah, well, that's...
Right, no, so right, you're both right, but you're asking.
What happens if we?
But you're asking that the vernacular changed. So
I think it's pretty clearly changed.
okay, that's the famous question about Horach Ma'anya. Why is it in Aramaic?
This is a shtar.
Okay, good. Okay, so now if you turn to page 2, here's the story. The Mishnah says in this is from the Yishalmi. There's no Talmud Bavli on Zrayim. There's only, except for Mesechus Brachos, which is part of Zrayim. But all the other Mesechtas, Bechoros and Shvias and Tain and Bikurim, there's no Talmud Bavli, but there is Talmud Yerushalmi on, I think, most of Zrayim. So and therefore the Rishonim very heavily relied on what it says in the Talmud Yerushalmi, because they didn't have a Talmud Bavli. And the Mishnayos, without the Gemara, it's almost impossible to understand the Mishnayos, because you see, you have one line of Gemara, one line of a Mishnah. I'm wearing Maseches Bey on Shabbos, so I had one line in Mishnah, Beish Nod B'Yantiv is Asur, and then there's 7 blot about Beish Nod B'Yantiv, and there's like all sorts of different permutation. I mean, what could be with an egg? So, but there's all sorts of different cases. So without having the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi intentionally wrote the Mishnah in a very pithy way, because this is how it's usually explained, because really you're not supposed to write down Torah Shebechsav, Torah Shebal Peh. He wrote it because there was a lot of machlokas and people were forgetting it. So he wrote it. Eis Lasos Hashem, the Gemara says. But he wrote it in as short a way as possible. And the Vilna Gaon says that in every Mishnah, there's Ramazim for the entire discussion of the Gemara, Marum is in the Mishnah. But you have to be Vilna Gaon to figure out where the Ramazim are. But since there's no Gemara on Talmud on Zerayim, it's very hard to understand the Mishnah. So therefore the Rishonim pay more attention to the Bavli than they normally do in other Masechtas. So here the Mishnah first on top of the page is the Mishnah. Pruzbal you give over. Actually, here it's in Hebrew. But you give over the loan to the Bezdin, and you say that by giving it to you, I should be able to collect the loan whenever I want, and then they sign. So now, on the bottom of the same page, this is the top paragraph on page 2. It says, Rav Chizkiya b'shem Rav Yirmiyah v'afilu nesunim baromi. He says that the Pruzbal works even if they're in Rome. So, in other words, because the Talmud Bavli was written in Eretz Yisrael, and Mishalmi, and even the Bavli was not written in Rome. So Rome was. I always had not tinus, but I always felt that in yeshivas they needed to teach Jewish history and world history together. Where do they intersect? Because what was going on in Rome at the time that this statement was written, when the Gemara was written and when the Mishnayos were written, but they don't teach that in yeshiva. A few times I spoke to principals. They said we don't have anybody to teach it. Nobody knows these things. So that's part of. They don't teach tiktok because nobody knows. But anyway, the Gemara, the Yerushalmi says even if it's in Rome. Now, who's in Rome? What's in Rome? Is it? There's two ways to understand the Gemara. So, at the bottom of the page, right underneath this paragraph, there's the Pnei Moshe, which is the classical commentary, and he says, "Afil nusunim b'romi, eino tzarach sheyeh lifnei habezdin." You don't have to appear before the bezdin. Even if they're far away, you could do it remotely. You don't have to do it. There was a bezdin in Rome, but the person who's writing the Pruzbal is in Eretz Yisrael. So he's writing that I'm giving it over to a bezdin in Rome. Why did they pick Rome? They wanted to pick something that's far away. So even though people didn't normally travel from Yerushalayim or Eretz Yisrael to Rome, but you could hand over the Pruzbal to the bezdin that's sitting in Rome. That's the understanding of the Pnei Moshe. The other way to understand this is that it's not talking about the bezdin, but it's talking about the shtar chov, the documents that you have, the loan documents that you don't have to bring. You're giving over the loan to the bezdin, so maybe you should have to come to the bezdin with all your paperwork. Where's the documentation? So you don't. Chazal were lenient with these things, and they said you don't have to, because Pruzbal is based on Hefker Bezdin. Hefker, so they made it as easy as possible. So you don't have to bring the documents to the Bezdin. That's the other way to understand. Afilu Nesunim B'romi doesn't mean the people; it means the documents. So this is a big machlokas Rishonim how to understand this statement in the Yerushalmi. So I collected some of the Maramakomas. So if you look right underneath the Yerushalmi, on the right side is the Ramban. The Ramban says, we're having on the Misachas Git in Perek Shulach Amin and Eman of the Lord Pruzbal Hayeliv Avad. My time came and take a Rabban and Lashavik and Terval Chesura Vamin and Tanahi. The Gemara says that if a person says that he had a Pruzbal and he lost it, we believe him, because since it's easy to have a Pruzbal, so why would he try to collect the loan without a Pruzbal? He certainly would want to make the effort to have a Pruzbal. But that's a statement in the Bavli. The Bavli says it's a machlokas tanaim. So the Ramban says, why is it a machlokas? At the time of the Mandar and Neman, it's a machlokas whether he's Neman to say that he made a Pruzbal. So the Ramban says, why is it a machlokas? Mishum de mi yemer de miskakile beidina u'ticha rabasi. Because who said the Bezdin agreed to see him? It's a big tercha to go to the bezin. Umitrach kuli hai lo tarach. The time of the man mishun yisrael mitrach nami tarach. The machokas is would a person make the effort to go to a bezin? It's far away. Would he go to the bezin or not? Even if the bezin is in his own city, he has to travel there. He's got a horse and donkey or whatever. So the Ramban apparently understood that when it says in the Sunan Baromi, it doesn't mean the Bezdin's in Rome. Because if you could use a Bezdin in Rome, you don't have to travel to the Bezdin. It means that you could stay where you are and execute a Pruzbal. So obviously the Ramban understood that when it says Baromi, it means that the documents are in Rome. On the other hand, if you look on the Mordechai next to the Ramban, the Mordechai lived in the 13th century. If you remember, he was killed in pogroms. I forgot the Rittenstreich or something. It was he lived in the 1200s. So and he's the Mordechai is quoted all the time by the Shulchan Aruch, the Beis Yosef, and the Ramah. It's not learned as much as other Rishonim, because for some reason the Gemara says everything needs mazel, even feel safer Torah behechel, and so the same thing is true. Svarim, people write Svarim. Some Svarim make it, some don't. And the Mordechai is in the back of the Gemara in small print, and it's hard to find things. So people don't learn it that often because it's very hard to locate. The Ran is closer than the Mordechai, and it's in bigger print, and it's divided into paragraphs, so it's easy to find things. So, but the Mordechai is an essential sefer. So the Mordechai says, "Al shehikshe Rav Yechiel in bezin gadol ador rechoki mimenu." If the bezin's far away, she'az bevadei amar sheker hu gama yenemen amar Pruzbal hayeli ve'avad. The Gemara says the reason why if you say you lost the Pruzbal, you're believed is because it's easy to make a Pruzbal. So why would you want to go and try to collect the loan without a Pruzbal when you could collect a Pruzbal? So Rav Yechiel asked, what do you mean? If he has to go to the Bezdin, if the Bezdin's far, the Bezdin Gedolei Hador, we're going to see where that comes from. But the Rabbi Yechiel held that the Bezdin has to be the great people of the generation. You can't use what I asked you before about Tom, Dick, and Harry. The Rabbi Yechiel found the position Misharim that it can't be people who are not fluent in Choshen Mishpat, and not only fluent, it has to be the main Bezdin in the city or in the country. So he says, if you have to go to the Bezdin Gedolei Hador, they're far away. So maybe the reason why maybe he was lazy and he didn't want to. It wasn't lazy; it was too difficult. So who said that he really executed Pruzbal? Nearly the Rav Barucha v'Kurva Tavel Milsa. So the Mordechai responds to Rav Yechiel's kasha. He says nothing to do with being close near or far. The Hagar Sina Lo B'Yisham, because Yishalmi says in Shvius, Rav Chizkiya b'Shem Rav Yirmiyah, Afilu Nesunim Baromi. Even if the Bezdin's in Rome, Pirish Hadayan. When it says Nusim Romi, it means that the Bezdin is in Rome. Komer Yochel Gomar Mosrani Uponi Uponi had the Anishim Mokum Ploni. If you Rechoki Meno Harbi, I would be shame Einam in front of Shaper. Even though they're far away, he could say, "I'm giving over the Shtaros to you." So so you see though that there's a machlokas here, the Ramban and the Mordechai. When the Yerushalmi says that it's good even if it's in Rome, does that mean that the Bezdin could be in Rome, or does that mean that the shtar could be in Rome? And the two nuschos of the Pruzbal that I showed you a few minutes ago revolve around this machlokas. The top Pruzbal follows the opinion that Afil Nusunim Baromi means that the Bezdin could be in Rome, and therefore they identified the Bezdin of Bnei Brak, but you don't have to go to the Bezdin of Bnei Brak. You just have Eidim that signed that you said, I want to give it over to the Bnei Brak Bezdin. But whereas the other Nusach of Pruzbal is based on the Shita of the Ramban, that when it says Nusunim Baromi, it doesn't mean the Bezdin. It means the documents are in Rome. And you see, Rabbi Yechiel held the same way, because Rabbi Yechiel said maybe he wasn't able to travel to the Bezdin. So obviously Rabbi Yechiel held that you have to be in front of the Bezdin. You can't sit in the street someplace in Bnei Brak and say, I'm giving it over to the Bezdin HaGadol in Bnei Brak. That won't work. You have to go to the Bezdin, and you have to have if you're sitting with people, they have to form a Bezdin. So that's the basic machlokas here. So let's see, how does it play itself out in terms of the poskim? So the Beis Yosef says, Uvahad Amrinan, on the bottom of the page, Loshna, Kasav B'Lashon Dayanim V'Chasam Eidim, Kasav B'Sefer HaTrumas, B'Shem Hari Abar Soloni. The Sefer Truma says in the name of the Ri Abar Soloni. I was curious to know who the Ri Abar Soloni is. I didn't know. I've seen his name appear every now and then. So I looked up in the Shem HaGedolim, which is the Sefer that Chida wrote. It's an anthology of all these farm that he knew of in his time. He traveled extensively throughout Europe, and he kept a record of all the farm. He saw many kisvei that we don't have anymore. And he also, there's two parts to the Sefer. One is the authors, and one is the Svarim. So he writes about Rabbi Yehuda ben Barzili al Bartzaloni. So first of all, by the way, why was his name Barzili? Why was his name Bartzaloni? Because he was from Barcelona. Barceloni. That's the way the Beis Yosef calls it. He was from Spain, from Barcelona. So he says he was Talmud Rav Yitzchak ben Reuven Shebizman HaRif. So he was very early. He was in the time of the Rif. That was like, the Rif was the 11th century. Chibur Sefer Itim, okay. Rashbatz Kosev Shechibur Otzar, Barava Ita Kosev Olav Harav Mecharastam. Okay, Rabbeinu Harav Hanasi Rabbi Yehuda Barcelona Chibur Gadol V'nichba B'chol Talmud. He wrote on all of Shas. Derech Pirish Piska Arucha Me'aretz Mido Rechava Miniyam. It was longer than the earth and wider than the sea. Sham Chashach Or. Okay, and he lit up the world with his. So, but on the next side, on the left side, I they have the Svarim, the Shemus drive. Barry Siegel has arranged every year, and they sell Svarim that they pull out from people's boxes of Shemus. So there was a beautiful set of 10 volumes called Otzer Gedolim, which has biographies about different Gedolim. So I grabbed it for $2. It was a steal. So he says. In commenting on this, Rabbi Yehuda Barzili al Barcelona, Barzili I guess was the family name. So he says, he was one of the earliest Rishonim to write on halacha. He preceded the Rambam. He wrote very extensive sefer on halacha. Shal kol halacha maybe kol ma sheyedu lo shenichtav l'fanav v'nidin zeh. He wrote everything that was available to him. He quoted many chuvas from the Gonim in Bavo, Sheish Nidan Hamaduber, Matigoshin and Riyafat, and he also quotes the Rif, Vigamosef Daitos Ross, and he also includes his own opinion. But often Chiburo Haya Ota Halacha Dimo Adam. There was no sefer before him, a sefer halacha that was as extensive. Because then afterwards nobody else prepared an anthology like him. This is the great tragedy. Before the printing press, which was Gutenberg introduced in the 1500s, so everything was handwritten, and he had this tremendously long sefer, and it was all lost. It was too expensive for most people to buy handwritten svarim that have such a length. And we only have a few pieces intact of the svarim of the Rabbi Yehuda, the Ri Bartzaloni. So that's who he was. So, but the Rishonim quote him extensively. So the Beis Yosef says that he saw in a sefer called Sefer Trumos, which is also a sefer that we don't commonly use. He says, "B'zel Shana Inyan Shtar Pruzbal." I'm on the bottom of page 2. Kachu Hoach Hamal ve'etz shlosha edim v'yasham afilu shnayim v'omer habo aloi sahadi. He goes before 2 or 3 witnesses, and he says, "You should be my witnesses." V'chazu danam asarna Pruzbal kamei shlosha dayanim the inam ploni uploni dayanim b'makom ploni. He says, I'm giving it over to the Dayanim in Makom Ploni. So you see that he holds that he holds like the Mordechai, that you don't have to come before the Dayanim. You can give it over to the Dayanim who are, even if they're far away, even if they're in Rome. And that's what the Yerushalmi means, that if you're Rome, it means that they are in Rome. And then he says at the bottom, Kosev Mordechai, this is the Bedek Abayis. The Beis Yosef wrote two separate chiburim on the tour. First, he wrote the Beis Yosef, and then at a later time, he added additional notes to his comments. It's called Bedek Habayis. So there he says that Midivi Rabbeinu Yechiel Mashra She'enu Mo Pruzbal In Ken Yom Radayanim Atzvam Busaychem V'Cholok Alav Midigarsim Yishalmi Afilu Nusun B'Romi Pirish Adayanim. He quotes the machoks between the Mordechai and Rabbi Yechiel about this exact point. Rabbi Yechiel held that you have to go and appear in front of the Bezdin. And the Mordechai said, no, you don't have to go. As long you could even do it remotely. In the Shulchan Aruch, the both the Ramah and the Mechaber Paskin that you don't have to be in front of the Bezdin. On the top of page 3, the Ramah says, "Ein chiluk bein hamal v'b'ir hadayanim alo, ki yachol lomar afil shlo b'fneim ani moser shtarosay bezdin ploni shbir ploni." Even if you're not in front of the Bezdin, you could say, I'm remotely transferring my loan to them.
What if the Bezdin wasn't Dolan? And what if it was just...
Yeah, we're going to come to that. That's the second topic. Do the Bezdin have to be Gedolim? We're going to come to that momentarily.
No, then you're relying on both of yourself.
Well, we'll see. We're going to, let's see. Just hold off a minute. And then the Mechaber says the same thing, basically. Omer Havulai Sahadi, V'chazad Anom, Mosana Pruzbal Kami Shlosh L'Yanim, De'inam Ploni, Ploni, Shebamakom Ploni. The Mechaber also makes it clear that he doesn't have to be in front of the Bezdin. He can say the Bezdin that's in a certain place. And the Gra comments on the Ramah, who says Ve'ein Chiluk. He says right underneath, he says Yushalmi Afil Nsunim Baromi Upirish Mordechai Hadayanim. The Ramah is following the Mordechai's explanation. Baromi means that the Dayanim could be far away. Now comes.
The Dayanim are far away, but who signs the document?
It has to be either 2 or 3 witnesses.
Other people,
not the Dayanim.
It to a different
that he's transferring it to that Bezdin in Rome, but they sign. They're just with.
That Bezdin doesn't even know that it's.
They don't know nothing about it. They're clueless. That's part of the Konas Chacham. And now here's the dissenting view. The dissenting view is so I already showed you Rabbi Yechiel holds that you have to appear in front of the Bezdin, because that's what the Mordechai said. Rabbi Yechiel asked, how do we know that he made a Pruzbal? Maybe he couldn't get to the Bezdin. The Ran says the same thing. The Ran says, Bafilo, where I have it in the middle of page 3, Bafilo einan biyado imo yamar masani command the masud. I mean, even if he's not holding the shtaros, the documents, when he says that I'm transferring to Bezdin, it's if he would be holding them. And that's what Yishalmi means, that even if they're in Rome, that you don't have to bring the documents to the Bezdin. You could say that the documents are in Rome. You have to go. You go to the Bezdin, but the documents could be far away in Rome. So that's the opinion of the Ran, not like the Mordechai. The Tumim says he doesn't understand the position. The Tumim was Rav Yonasan Eibshin, so he lived much later. He lived about 300 years ago. So he says he doesn't understand the position that says that you don't have to appear before the Bezdin. He says, he says, Din zet tzarech liyin. I don't understand this din that the Ramah says that you don't have to appear in front of the Bezdin. He only came call poskim. Din istapku ibayin Bezdin mumchim. Because there's a big machok shishanim. Does the Bezdin have to be a super Bezdin? It has to be Bezdin of people who are experts. Why should there be a machlokas about whether you need a super Bezdin? There always is super. There always are batei dinim that are super qualified. So why? So practically speaking, everybody should just write that they're transferring it to that type of Bezdin. The ein mo kim b'fnei Bezdin. And the Rabbi Yechiel in the Mordechai that we started about before makes it clear that he holds that you have to go to the Bezdin. The Mordechai disagrees because Yishalmi, the Kamar feel in the Sunnah Romi, he quotes Yishalmi and says it's even if it's in Rome. When he says a few in the Sunnah Romi means the stars. That's the Ran that I just showed you a second ago. He doesn't agree with the Mordechai's interpretation that it's going on the Bezdin. V'ha'ein shtaros biyadim. Mikol kamal v'chein ve'emes loshen nesunim yosem mistaver the kavi al shtaros. He says the language of Yerushalmi. It says I feel nesunim baromi. It's the nesunim would be appropriate if you're talking about a document. You can say the documents are put in Rome, but you don't say people are nesunim in Rome. People are, you don't put people places; they go places. So the tumim, and there's other poskim that also favor the position of Rabbeinu Chil and the Ran, that you have to appear before the Bezdin. So that's the advantage of the second Pruzbal that I showed you, is that you actually are appearing in front of the Bezdin. The Bezdin's there. You bring together 3 people and they sign that, so you're in front of the Bezdin. But there's a downside to the second Pruzbal, and that is because some say that it has to be a Bezdin of Gedolei Hador. So that's based on the Gemara in Gittin on the bottom of page 3. The Gemara says, Dilma, the Gemara's having a discussion about how did Hillel establish a Pruzbal. So I should have underlined it a little bit before. The Gemara says that Hillel said that the Pruzbal only helps. Shmuel said that you only can write a Pruzbal if the Bezdin is like the Bezdin of Surah or Nahadoi, which was one of the top 2 the Bati Dinim. So the Gemara says that if the Gemara, I don't want to get sidetracked, but the Gemara says Dumaki Tikan Hillel Dari Alma Kagon Beidina Didei Ukaravambi Ravasi. Maybe when Hillel instituted Pruzbal, he didn't require the Bezdin of Surah Nahadoi. Maybe he said it's okay to have a Bezdin like in his time. It was the Bezdin of Rami and Ravasi. But maybe it has to. They were saying that maybe it has to be it can't be just a regular Bezdin. It has to be a Bezdin that has authority to extract money. So the Gemara says, Tashma Dam Shmuel HaPruzbal Ulbena Dayanahu Iyashechal Vatlinu. Shmuel said he doesn't like Pruzbal. He said it's a disgrace that we write Pruzbal. And he says, if it was up to me, I would be Vatal Pruzbal. So the Gemara says, how did Shmuel think he can Vatal Pruzbal? There was a Tankanas Chachamim. Elin can go to Imano, but Chacham Minyan. So the Gemara says, Iyashechal Yoser Mihilel Avatline. If I would if I had the koyach, I would be mevatel it. And then the message Rachman Amar ikamina ikamaine. And Rachman says that no, he holds that the Pruzbal should be intact. So the reason why I'm showing this to you is you'll see in a minute. So there's basically machlokas between Rav Nachman and Shmuel. Shmuel was ready to do away with Pruzbal, and Rav Nachman was how the Pruzbal should remain instituted. So that's going to become relevant in a minute. So if you look at the bottom of the page, the Tosis on that daf says the Alimul of Kuye Mamona, that the Gemara says that you need a Bezdin that's able to extract money. Rabbeinu Tam Kosov Pruzbal. Rabbeinu Tam used to write a Pruzbal. Rabbeinu Tam actually, the Rishonim said Rabbeinu Tam initially said that you can't write a Pruzbal because it has to be a Bezdin like there was like the Batidinim in Surah and Nardah. We don't have such Batidinim anymore. But then Rabbeinu Tam reversed himself, and he himself wrote a Pruzbal. You don't need a Bezdin as powerful as in the time of Hillel, which was the Bezdin in Surah and Nardah. It's sufficient to have Bezdin Choshev Shebedor, a Bezdin. So to me, it sounds like Cheshav B'dor means the most prestigious Bezdin in the generation. V'ashkenami shahayu mekilim Rabbanan devei Rav Asi demasi mimaya adadin. He brings a raya that the Talmidim of Rav Asi exchanged shtaros, and so you see that they held that you could write a Pruzbal b'zman hazeh. So that was Rabbeinu Tam originally thought you shouldn't write a Pruzbal, but in the end he said you could, but it has to be Bezdin Choshev Shebedor. On the next page, the Rosh says Rabbeinu on top of the page. Rabbeinu Tam Kosim Sefer Yosher. The Shvi is no Haggis B'Zana Zeh. Rabbeinu Tam is discussing also the issue of whether Shemitah is no Haggis B'Zana Zeh altogether. V'Hevi Raim in the Chazin El Chohana Amarayim Shmuel Rav Nachum Rabbi Rabbi Rabban Ben Rashi Shal Yinogim Shemitah's Ksafim B'Bavel. He says that you see that they all, the Gemara tells stories about each one where they executed a Pruzbal. So you see Shemitah is no Haggis B'Zana Zeh. V'Ein Lichtov Pruzbal B'Zman Hazeh. Also, Rabbeinu Tam said in the Sefer Yashar, as I told you before, you shouldn't write a Pruzbal anymore. She'ein anu mumchim k'Ravami v'Ravasi, because we don't have Batei Dinim with the level of expertise, of greatness of Ravami and Ravasi. V'shuv chasav bar Rabbeinu Tam. Then Rabbeinu Tam reversed himself. Because of who ba'atzal Pruzbal, he himself wrote Pruzbal. He who omer delobinin el beisnin chashish shebedor. You only need that in that generation's chashuv, not the generation of Ravami Ravasi. V'ashka nami Rabbanan debei. Okay, this part is not relevant already. Okay, this is how he quotes he quotes the Rabbeinu Tam. But like I told you, the first Rabbeinu Tam thought you shouldn't write a Pruzbal, and then he reversed himself and said you could write a Pruzbal. In the middle of the page, the Rambam says, Ein kosvim Pruzbal el chachamim gedolim biyoser kebeisina shel Ravami Ravasi sheim ruim lafkiyam amim ne'adam. The Rambam seems to say that you can't write a Pruzbal because he says the bezin has to be equivalent of Ravami and Ravasi, but the Mefarshim say that the Rambam doesn't mean that literally. If you look, for example, on the left side in the Kesef Mishnah, he says because of Iran umikom makom bezin de Ravami Ravasi lav dafka. It's enough that it's a bezin chashiv, and then where it's underlined, we came in the chol bezin chashiv b'dor. Right, afkiyamam and me'el mashma the chol bezin chashiv b'dor. How we can bezin sheravam ras. You just need a bezin that has authority to extract money. On the bottom of the page, the Beis Yosef quotes the Baal HaTrumas. The Baal HaTrumas says, Kagom Bezdin Ravami Ravasi, Ikam Adamar the Inna Leslam Bezdin Agad, Leslam Michtav Pruzbal. There are those that say you can't write a Pruzbal. That's the sheet of Rabbeinu Tam. V'iyah v'lamahani, Mistav the Chol Shlosh became Bedin, Uve'ina Pruzbal Yodim Mitzvah Shmita, V'himchum Rabba Malayim Bosa Dar Shehem Darimba. He says, he holds that you only need 3 people who are baki in halachos, and the people in that city appointed them to be dayanim. Hareim ba'osair v'osasman k'beidina de Ravami Ravasi. They have the status of the bezdin of Ravami and Ravasi. So then, on the next page, so the Shulchan Aruch says, Pruzbal Eino mishamim eni nichtav el bebezdin chashuv. The Pruzbal is only written in a bezdin chashuv. The hainu shlosha b'kiyim bedin. They have to be baki be'ina uvinyan Pruzbal v'yodim in shmita v'himchum rabbim lehem be'osa ir. And the rabbim appointed them to be the dayanim in the city. So I'm sorry that I went through a little quickly, but what emerges is there are many Rishonim that say that the Pruzbal has to have dayanim who are mumchim. So it begins with Rabbeinu Tam, who first he didn't want to even allow writing Pruzbal because he said they're not like the Batei Dinim of Ravami Ravasi. And then he reversed himself and he said, as long as they're bezin choshev shebedor, the greatest bezin in the generation. The Rambam also seems to subscribe to that because he said it should be like a bezin like Ravami Ravasi, which the Mefarshim say means the bezin choshev shebedor. However, the Shulchan Aruch doesn't say it's the. He leaves out the word bedor. He says, you don't need the chashiv shebedor. It's enough that they're chashiv. And he says, what does chashiv mean? And the himchum rabalim. They were appointed by the people in the city, ba'osair. So there's you have two different positions. One position is has to be the bezin chashiv, the most chashiv bezin in the generation. And then, but the Shulchan Aruch says it's enough. It's the most important. It's an important bezin of the city, and the Shulchan Aruch is quoting the Sefer HaTrumas, which I put on the bottom of page 4. That's why I put it in there, because the Sefer HaTruma says we don't have Bezdin Hagadol, but he says, but nonetheless, it's enough. The last two lines, he says, "V'be'inan Pruzbal v'yodim mitzvah shmita v'himchum rabam leim ba'osir." The Sefer HaTruma says it's enough that the Bezdin was appointed by the people in the city. So we have the Rebbeinu Tam said you can't do a Pruzbal because we don't have the type of Batei The Shulchan Aruch quotes the Sefer Trumas that it's long as the Rishon, the Tosas says that Rebbeinu Tam held you need the Bezdin Choshev Shebedor, has to be the most important Bezdin, but the Shulchan Aruch knocks it down a level. It says it's enough that it's the Bezdin that's appointed in the city, which means that according to Shulchan Aruch, you cannot pull together 3 Tom, Dick, and Harrys and make a Bezdin, because the people that we're pulling together are not experts. They're not Bekiyim Bedin, and they don't, and you see how complicated even just Pruzbal is. But they're not familiar. You have to learn Choshen Mishpat. They get Smicha Choshen Mishpat, and they have to be pointed to be the Dayanim. So we don't have that. So according to the Mechaber, if you're a Sfardi, don't use the second form of Pruzbal, where it says that you pull together 3 people and they sign it. If you want to do that, you have to have 3 people who are expert Dayanim. So how come we allow Dayanim who are not experts? How come we in the shul, I've been doing this for many years, I allow people to pull people in? How come why don't we insist on Dayanim that are choshev? So it's because Ramah says right after Mechaber on page 5, V'yesh omrim the kosim Pruzbal v'chol bezdin v'nearly the shel hakom b'zman hazeh. Ramah says you don't need the bezdin choshev shebeir. He's coming to disagree with the Mechaber. The Mechaber is following the Sefer Trumas, who was also Rishon, but the Ramah is disagreeing. He says it doesn't matter. Any bezdin is fine. You don't need a bezdin choshev. Any bezdin is fine, and he says v'yesh omrim that you could write with any bezdin, and he says v'nearly shel hakom b'zman hazeh. And you could be Mekel Bisman Hazeh. Who is this Yesh Omrim? I believe the Yesh Omrim is the Mordechai, because the Mordechai, Rabbi Chil said that how do you know the guy who wrote a Pruzbal maybe he couldn't find a Bezdin? So Mordechai said, what do you mean? You don't need a special Bezdin. You could use any Bezdin.
Is the reason in the Shulchan Aruch the same as the Ramban in the beginning, or is that more like Tos? Because Tosfos isn't based on that line in the but the Ramban on the line in the Yerushalmi said that they couldn't find the Beis Din. And assuming that implies they couldn't find the Beis Din Choshev,
but that's not the Ramban doesn't say that he doesn't base that on the Yerushalmi that you need a Bezdin Choshev. The Ramban,
that's how he explains the line.
That's not the Yerushalmi. That's the Babli. The Babli says that the Babli says that if a person says that he had a Pruzbal, oh, you're right. That's the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says that it's a machlokas. Whether if he said you're talking about that Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says a machlokas if a person says he lost his Pruzbal, whether he's Neman. So the Ramban said the machlokas is whether you're concerned that maybe it was a tircha to find that bezdin. So what? So you're saying
So then that would explain the line of the Romi in our Yerushalmi.
That it's according to the Ramban when it says Baromi. No, but the Ramban holds Baromi means that the documents are in Rome, not that the bezdin's in Rome. He doesn't. That's what he says. The Ramban says that as long as the documents, the Ramban doesn't say it, but that's the other Rishonim say that's how he interprets the when it says Baromi. It's not talking about the bezdin. It's talking about the. No, I'm sorry. The Ramban holds that the Baromi is talking about the. Is talking about. Yeah, he holds Baromi is talking about the bezdin. That the bezdin is far away, and therefore the person wasn't able to get to the bezdin. Okay, so anyway, what?
Established based in the city, like the said.
Right.
Can they appoint a committee of people who are themselves not Diana?
I don't know. I didn't see anybody that says they could do that. So, but bottom line is the Ramah says that you don't need a bezdin choshev. He said you can use it any b'chol bezdin, any bezdin. And so just like for Hataras Nadarim, we don't need a Bezdin Choshev. So you pull together 3 people and you say, You say the nusach for the Dayan Mumchim. So, and the Ramah says, "V'niri the yesh l'hakam b'zman hazeh." This Ramah is probably Shitasa. The Ramah himself said the Mikra Din, you don't need a Pruzbal b'zman hazeh. So if you don't need a Pruzbal b'zman hazeh, so then you could do whatever you could be very lenient and to do the minimum. So the minimum is that you have a you could use any bezdin. So bottom line is that there's two sets of arguments here. One set of arguments is do you need a bezdin chashuv, and the second set of arguments is do you have to appear before the bezdin. So the both the Mechaber and Ramah say you don't have to appear before the bezdin. You can do it remotely, but then what type of bezdin is a Machlokas Mechaber Ramah? The Mechaber holds it has to be a bezdin chashuv, and the Ramah holds it doesn't have to be bezdin chashuv. So the Sfardim have to do the Pruzbal, the top document, the Pruzbal that I showed you on the first page, where they say that we're transferring the Pruzbal to the bezdin that's sitting in such and such a place, and they could pick whichever bezdin they want. So they could pick the bezdin chashiv in the city. They would pick the bezdin in Bnei Brak. Does he say where it is? It doesn't say, but Harein Mosig bezdin be'ir. You specify the city. It's a formal bezdin, and that's the position of the mechaber, that you have to have dayanim that mumchim, and it becomes necessary according to mechaber in order that everybody shouldn't have to take a bus and go to Bnei Brak. Or train. So the fact that you don't have to appear before the bezdin, if you hold like those Rishonim that say you don't need to go to the bezdin, and that's the way the Shulchan Aruch himself paskins, so then that makes it feasible. You don't have to go to the bezdin, but when you write the Pruzbal, write in the name of the bezdin chashuv that appears. Now the downside of doing that is that the kula of not appearing before a bezdin, or the position that you don't have to appear before a bezdin, it's true the Shulchan Aruch passes that way and the Ramah passes that way, but others disagree. The Ran disagrees, Rabbi Yechiel disagree, and the Urim and Tumim, which is Yonasan Eibshitz, disagreed. He thought that. So if you want to cover both bases, you're sort of in a pickle, because the only way to do it would be to write bezdin chashuv, and then go there to the actual bezdin. Now, if everybody would do that, the bezdin wouldn't be able to take care of their work, because they would have hundreds of people trying to decide. So so those people who the Sfardim have to rely on the position of the mechaber that you don't have to appear before the bezdin, because since the Sfardim hold that it has to be a bezdin chashuv, so they're forced to they can't be machmer like the Urim V'Tumim and Rabbi Yechiel, because then they're going to be trapped. Then they'll have to travel to the actual bezdin. So in order to be workable, so they use they have to use the bezdin chashuv in the ear, but they're not appearing before the bezdin, and they're relying on those Rishonim that say when it says baromi, it means that the bezdin's in Romi. The explanation that Pnei Moshe on the side of Yerushalmi, and the Mordechai and other Rishonim that hold Romi is referring to the bezdin. But if you wanna follow the shita that says that you have to appear before the bezdin, Rabbi Yechiel, so then you won't be able to have the bezdin chashuv city. So then you'll have to rely on the Ramah. That the Ramah says that you don't have to you can have any bezdin, any three people.
So, but unless I missed something, everybody you quoted here, other than the Ramah, obviously, seems to say you really do need a bezdin chashuv.
Yeah,
So
well,
you're basically relying on the Ramah's kula that you don't
right.
need a Pruzbal to begin with.
Well, who did the Ram? Well, the Ram. Yeah, okay. So the Ashkenazim, we rely on the Ramah. I don't remember if there was more. Oh, you know what? I left out the Rush. I'm sorry, because the Rush on the top of page 4.
You did go through this rush, didn't
Yeah, but the Rush says, okay, the Rush says, Umashma, if you look about 7 lines from the bottom, Umashma bitov dvarav.
you?
He says, V'ashka nami rabbanan debei Ravashi, Damasri milalade, Umashma bitov dvarav. This is how he's interpreting Rabbeinu Tam. The choshev kulhu rabbanan debei Rav Ashi bezdin mumchim. Mishum the Rav Ashi hayigadol hador. He says Rabbeinu Tam that says that you need the bezdin choshev bedor. He holds that it has to be the top bezdin in the country, and he holds that because the Gemara says that you have to go that they went to Rav Ashi's bezdin. So the Rabbeinu Tam thought we don't have batidim like Rav Ashi. Then he said no, the yifta bedor kishmu bedor. One of the Rishonim say. So our batidim are just as good as Rav Ami Varashis. But the Rosh says, "V'lo mistavra hachi." I disagree. El mashmid dahani amori basrei leslu hod l'shmul dama l'kosvina Pruzbal el bebeidina de sura el bebeidina de narandari. There was a machlok Shmuel who said that it has to be a bezin. Shmuel's one that said it has to be a bezin chashiv, but Shmuel held that you really shouldn't have Pruzbal. He's ready to battle it. But Nardoi disagreed with Shmuel, and not Nardoi. The Rav Nachman disagreed with Shmuel. So the Rosh is saying that according to Rav Nachman, you don't need the requirement that it should be a gadol hador. It's a little bit hard to understand in the Rosh, but that's what he's saying. He's saying you don't. That's the basis for the Ramah. The Ramah base is based on the Rosh. The Rosh holds you don't need the bezin that's gadol be'ir. It could be, and any people could be on the bezin. Well, the only thing is Russians say they don't have to be Talmidei Chachamim. In the Ramah, it's not clear that when he says that B'chol Bezdin, do they at least have to be Talmidei Chachamim? We don't know. So I asked. So now the question is, what is better for the Sfardim have to do the way the first star is that they have to point to the Bezdin Chashiv in Bnei Brak. In America, I saw the RCA sent out a Nusach Star Pruzbal where they appoint Rabbi Willick's Bezdin from the RCA Bezdin. Other people might appoint Rabbi First's Bezdin. I don't know. There's a few very choshev about the but that's if you're a Sephardi. But if you're an Ashkenazi, then you could do either way. You could either the Ramah is making on both accounts. The Ramah holds that you don't have to be in front of the Bezdin, and you also don't need a Bezdin choshev. So you could do either way. So is there a preference according to the Ashkenazim? So this question is raised by Rabbi Rimon. On the bottom of page 5, he says, Ma adif, what's better? Ha'im adif bezdin shel dayana mumchim? Is it better to have a chashuv bezdin? Chasim is shalom madam, but then you're going to end up not signing in front of them. O shema adif bezdin ragil b'maimid dayanim. Or maybe it's better to have a regular bezdin, but at least they're present. So if you Shulchan Aruch the bezdin shel mumchim, Shulchan Aruch holds you have to have a bezdin shel mumchim. Sharehu posik shesar deina mumchim sheins tarif ben achasayam. The Shulchan Aruch holds you have to have the chashuv of bezdin, and he holds that you don't have to be. You can do it remotely. However, if you're Ramah, yeshuakim is stopping. But according to Ramah, you could wonder ma. Ma adav. What the Ramah doesn't require you to appear before the bezdin. So you could do it either way. You could either do bezdin of mumchim, or you could do a bezdin in front of you. But is it better? Which way is better to do? And he says l'mroshu mekel b'shnei hadvarim in kain an menasa livdak rak hidor b'puzzle. He says l'maisa the Ramah holds you could do it either way because Ramah is mekel on both things. He's mekel that you don't need dayan mumchim, and he's mekel that you could do it remotely. But he says, if you want to be Mahader, what's the best way to be Mahader? So I would have thought the best thing to do is that we should do like the Sfardim. Because we should do Bezdin Choshev. Because rely on the and the Mechaber, and we should do, the other way. We should do the opposite of Sfardim. We should do a Bezdin where we're doing it in front of the Bezdin. Because according to no, I take back what I was going to say. Okay, in other words, you're either way. There's a machlokas rishonim whether your way is good. If you do it not in front of the bezdin, so the Rishonim say that it's no good. And if you do it in front of the Bezdin, so that you're using regular people, so then the Rishonim say it's no good. So you could according to Ramah, you could do either one because Ramah is making on both accounts. I asked Rabbi first, what's better? Called him last night. He said you can do whatever you want. Either one's okay. You could do it either make your own Bezdin and it'll be in front of the Bezdin, or you could do it remotely and you could appoint whatever Bezdin you want.
Does it matter if the Lova is Sephardi or the Malva is Ashkenaz? Like, do you have the right if you're the?
No, it should be totally on the Malva because the Malva is the one that has the Yisr of collecting the loan. The loan. I mean, I don't have to accommodate the
Well,
Lova.
I have my Pruzbal from 21 years ago in front of Wilkenstein, Ramon.
Here, so on the bottom of the page, he's going to say what Rabbi
So
Lichtenstein.
I have that Pruzbal.
You have that?
Talking about,
Okay.
right, and again.
So let me show everybody what you're talking about. Then you'll tell us the rest of the story. Maria Rav Lichtenstein Shlita. At that time he was alive. This is Rabbi Ron's Rebbe. No Lasel Shnei Hadvarim. He makes a hybrid of both things. But Pruzbal Rishumim Shmeimos Bezdin Mumchim. He writes down Bezdin Mumcha. Ach b'makom shachtu shnei edim chos mishalosha. And he doesn't only use 2 edim. He has three witnesses. Uve Pruzbal yesh l'tnai shim ein hu mo el b'fnei dayanim harei shehachov v'zim zol shloshes hasumim. He makes it tonight that if you need a bezdin chashuv, so then the people that are signing are just witnesses. But if you need to be in front of bezdin, what?
That's on the first choice.
It is. It has that it should. But it's not. Oh, you're right. It has it. I didn't see that. You're right.
He's got a backup.
Okay, absolutely, you're correct.
Isn't that what-
So you see, Rabbi Yasher did the same thing. Okay, thank you very much, Doron. You're right. That's exactly what Rabbi Yasher did. So he did the same as Rabbi Aaron. So
The
that
funny thing is that those people who were just the Aiden were Aaron Lichtenstein, Rev Ramon, and Gino Pearl, who was the out-based in
so they were there. All
They're not a kosher one.
right. So who was the Choshev Bezdin?
They said the Rabbi Rashid in Yerushalayim.
They respected the
It
Rabbi.
wasn't so much on based in Chassid as much as the based in
The Bezdin that was appointed by the city, because that's the lashon of the mechaber. It has to be the Bezdin Shabir. Okay, so there you have it.
How does this apply to Ocha based? Like, you give over your.
The also Bezdin has to do with Paris, Shemitah
You know
Paris.
what I'm saying? When you give it over to the basin, does it need to be in front of?
Oh, what type of Bezdin do you need for Otzer Bezdin? I don't know. That's a good
I
question.
don't think you need any based in Frozen based in at all because it's need based in Chassid because it's not really about the based in Chassid. It's about the fact that they're not taking money.
Yeah, but you have to arrange with somebody. You can't
So
just.
there's a group called that does Shemitahs Otzer based in.
Yeah, but
Dayanim,
but he's
not-
asking whether that group has to have Dayana Mumchim or it could be
I
regular
don't think
people.
they're Dayanim Mumchim. I think they're like whoever.
They're just
People
like
I know.
like
I know
us.
In in Yerushalayim, in Baka, when my mother did Oster based in for her fruit, it was the local rabbi.
It was just local
Then how
people.
do sort and rely on Ocha based?
I don't know. You ask a good question. I don't know if I don't know what the requirement. It's not necessarily the same as the requirements for Pruzbal. It could be that it's different a different set of requirements. I don't know. Okay, so I hope everything is clear. And
So what are you gonna use this year? Are you gonna do it this year?
I don't know.
You gotta decide.
So really, I should do this hybrid. I should. It's no extra effort.
Right.
You don't have to fill in anything extra. What I could do is, I would fill in the names and then photocopy it, so I don't have to write more, and just write that. Write it with the tonight that either they're Adim or they'll be the best. Probably is best to do that because then you have the.
Extra that way.
Yeah, I'll double my fee.
So this is Pruzbal is about 4 times the length of a Lagash.